Hi, my name is Jody, and me and my husband are going to be documenting our journey to adding to our family through donor IVF. We do have 4 biological kids. With a little backstory on that, I had my tubes tied and burnt in July of 2011 following the birth of our 4th child. Fast forward to October 2017, we saw a specialist about getting a tubal reversal, and he told us that we did not have a very good chance of that being successful, and he recommended IVF because essentially we just had a roadblock, meaning my tubes, that we just needed to go around that, and that all my labs and everything looked great. My husband's semen analysis was great. We would be great for IVF. So we saw the price of IVF and then decided to look into other options to add to our family. So we became licensed foster parents here in Texas in December of 2017. And then we fostered for about 2 years. And then the heartbreak that came along with foster care, we ultimately decided to stop fostering last summer after a child we had left. We decided to stop fostering, and we started looking. We went and saw another IVF specialist here in the Dallas area, and she reran all the tests because it had been 2 years, and said me and my husband, the numbers and everything still looked great. We would be great for IVF, and told us all the different options for IVF, like mini IVF, traditional IVF. They had something called the InvoCell, which is a cheaper version of IVF. And then you could use donors, or you could do a donor embryo. So there's a whole lot of options that I just didn't even know was a possibility. So we went and saw her, and then we started researching a little bit ourselves. And then we came across more information about donor IVF. And that's something that really appealed to us, because one of our holdups with doing IVF was we have 2 kids. One kid is autistic, and they were it was our youngest. They told us after he was diagnosed at 2.5 that any children we would have that would come after him had a higher chance of being autistic too. And then our other daughter, she has an immune disease and a respiratory disease, and they've been trying for almost 9 years to figure out what it is, and it's an unknown disease, meaning nobody's ever been diagnosed with it before. She's in a study down in Houston, and so we don't know if it's genetically passed down. Nothing's known about it. We just know that she's in the hospital multiple times every year. She's been on a ventilator. Just a lot is unknown. And so with those 2 things, and then my health, I was diagnosed with epilepsy following the birth of my 3rd child, and I've been controlled now for like 5, almost 6 years. We were concerned what the stemming process, because it's such a hard toll on your body when you're stemming to retrieve your own eggs. We were afraid what that would do to me epilepsy-wise, because any new medication you start, you run a risk of it interacting with your anti-seizure meds. So that was a major concern of ours. And then coupled with our children's medical issues, we just decided that we wanted to jump straight to the donor route, which is usually pretty abnormal. Most people try IVF first, but we wanted to go the straight donor route from the start. So we found a clinic up north that is very affordable when it comes to their donor packages. Donor packages can get very expensive. So we found a clinic up north, and instead of doing donor embryos, meaning their embryos donated from a couple that's already gone through their IVF cycle, and they've completed their family and they have embryos left over, so they donate them to families that need to use donor embryos. That process is usually pretty affordable. It's usually cheaper than regular IVF. but there's a wait list at almost all the clinics in the U.S. There's a wait list for donor embryos. But the clinic we found had donor eggs, which they have like a whole list of donor eggs that you can use. And they're very affordable compared to if you were to buy them at like a sperm bank. There's like sperm bank and egg banks and stuff like that. Our clinic was very affordable. So we bought, last October, we actually did a round with donors. We bought 7 donor eggs, and then we bought donor sperm, and then they created them in the lab, created embryos in the lab. We ended up with 5 embryos. And so after they created the 5 embryos, they froze them, and about a month later, we came out there and they thawed 2 and transferred 2 embryos into me. And that transfer failed. There was no implantation. And so then we took a break through the holidays. And then this February, on February 1st, we went back out there. They thawed 2 more embryos and transferred 2 more into me. 1 implanted, and but I ended up miscarrying at about the 6 to 7 week mark. So we still do have 1 embryo left. They recommended that because that embryo was graded very low, the chances of it sticking aren't very high. So they recommended we go ahead and move on to buying a new batch of donor eggs and then proceeding with a new group. So last week, like April 15th, I think it was, we purchased 8 eggs from a new donor. We chose new donors this round. So we have 8 eggs from a new donor, and then we purchased new sperm, and that was shipped out there to the lab on Friday, so April 17th. And now we're doing it a little bit different this time. Instead of doing a frozen embryo transfer, which is where they thaw the eggs, create the embryos, and then freeze any embryos until we come out there. Then they thaw however many we're going to transfer. This time around, they're not creating embryos until like 5 days before. They'll start thawing 5 days before my transfer. So as we're driving out there is when they'll be thawing the eggs, thawing the sperm, and then creating the embryos, and it will end up being a fresh embryo transfer. So we'll transfer on either day 3 or 5. Our clinic does do a lot of 3-day transfers. If the embryos aren't looking great, they'll transfer at 3 days. Or if they're looking good, they'll let them go to 5 to 6 days. So we will be driving out there as they're creating the embryos, and when we get there, they'll transfer hopefully two embryos in fresh, and then they'll freeze the remainder of the embryos. So we're doing it a little bit different this time. We're hopeful that it'll be successful and we'll have a normal pregnancy and all that, but we just wanted to document this whole journey because it's such a unique journey that isn't widely talked about. We wanted to document it for our future kids to look back and see, but also when we started this process, I looked all over YouTube for, stories of women that are going through IVF or donor IVF after a tubal ligation. So really no fertility issues, but just having to go around it because your tubes are tied. And there's plenty of IVF stories out there, videos to watch, but there's not a whole lot of donor, and there's not a whole lot of stories of women doing it after a tubal. And so I just figured if I'm already going to be videoing this, journey for our for our future children, why not go ahead and let other people see it too, so they know, kind of what to expect. Now the embryo transfers are pretty much the same across the board. Medications might differ a little bit, but it's just I know I like seeing people with similar stories, and I just haven't seen that much on YouTube. So that's so there'll be more videos to come. I'll be starting my cycle day 1 in like 2 to 3 weeks, so I'll be ordering my meds pretty soon. So I'll do a medication video, shot videos, because I do have to take Lovenox at the start of my cycle. And so, you know, shot videos, like a vlog of us on our way out there, the transfer. So there'll be a lot of videos to come. We're going to document as much as we possibly can, but we just want to share our story, so our future kids can see what we went through in order to have them. And we're so excited, and we feel very hopeful this time around. But my husband will be making some appearances too. But yeah, so we will see you in the next video.